I could definitely hear the props flattening out in the air, and you can see the tiny oscillations going on too. The cyclones here definitely a lot smoother, and it looks like it's definitely going to be the right setup for us to work with after trying a few different props here on this setup. What's going on, everybody? Chad CRC with you here. Welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to talk Helio. We're going to talk setting it up and your first steps to start tuning this thing. Now I'm going to go ahead and put in some prerequisites. First of all, I've added a few things down in my description to my affiliate links for Amazon. Help a small YouTube channel out. Some great KESTER solder on there that I've been using now. That has really made life a lot easier. Got a soldering video coming up and all that kind of stuff. So, where do you even start with Helio? So, I'm going to give you the high-level practical experiences that I've dealt with, and hopefully some other people will chime in that are maybe developers or whatever, and that'll be great. But I just want to give this presentation from like a common man who is just in this hobby and kind of knows what he's doing a little bit and has been messing around forever. So I have had a successful build and a successful tune. I've been with them from the beginning with the first generation of the Spring, and now I'm running a couple all-in-ones. We're going to be talking about a 5-inch reverb with an all-in-one that I got going on. I have tried to do a 6-inch with Helio, and honestly I probably could have got it worked out, but maybe after a little bit more than I wanted to put into it, Richard Shelton, the guy that makes the Epics and multicopterbuilders.com, we all fly Betaflight Tempest inside our Epics. He went out, did all the PIDs and all the hard work for us, so why even bother? So let's get started here and quit talking, and we'll just kind of intermingle things a little bit. So as you can see, I don't discriminate when it comes to what I fly. This 6-inch Proton has erratics in it. There's my first generation Helio with the PDB. This 5.5-inch Proton has just a regular F4 built into it, flashed with Butterflight. My Epic 5.5-inch, my Big Air Cruiser, multicopterbuilders.com, that has Betaflight on it on a Tempest F4. And this is the second reverb that we're working on here in the video that has the Helio all-in-one. Now all of these have the exact same motors except the old reverb, and those are the Multicopter Builder Primo 2207s. I've talked about them a lot. Get those from Richard, Multicopter Builders. You will not be disappointed. So we'll focus just on the two Helios. This reverb weighs a little bit more than this one here does. This has the 2207 2450s on it, and this has the TBS Master Pilot 2400. They're like 2306 motors, so they're a cheaper quality motor. They don't have as good of bearings in them. They don't spin up as fast. So I'm able to get the footage that I have been able to get running regular Dow 5040, your regular freestyle type of prop, and I'll link my latest video, and you can see just how responsive and fun it is and everything. It was pretty easy to tune with plasmatry, you know, 6, 8, 10 batteries, something like that, and it takes a beating and just keeps on going. The one thing I've noticed about the Helio firmware is that it's definitely adaptive. Once you get it set up really good, if you start nicking up props, or if you have a crash and something goes out of balance, your battery shifts, it really doesn't affect anything in flight. So when I wanted to start working on this one, I naturally went to that prop right off the bat, and I'll show you in the video what was going on. And I tried these. I tried the HQ 4.8s, and they just were too thin with these motors because they spin up too fast even on 4S. So I actually ended up settling on the Cyclones, and they are giving me the best noise and the best looking video so far. So that's one lesson that I've learned about Helio, is that I guess you could say it's kind of picky as far as like your setup goes, but once you get it going, it's golden. It will take abuse and chipped up props and everything, like I said, but you can't really get stuck on, I'm going to use this prop only and I'm going to tune around it and get things going. You definitely are going to need to try some different kind of props with your setup. I think Bardwell demonstrated that very well in his second Helio video, even though he didn't give a lot of credit to Helio in the video. He gave more credit to the props, but matching your props with your frame and your power system when you're using a better firmware, I think, is something that is more important, and it's part, again, of being in that like undiscovered territory. All right, so we are in Butterflight here, connected up to the new reverb, and I am running 32K accelerometer on, multi-shot, CRSF, pretty much all the basic standard stuff that's going on here. The flights that you're going to see are going to be some regular default PIDs with the default filters, but I have been kind of messing around and jumped ahead since then, but we'll go over all that. First things first, a lot of people don't know how to black box and they're scared of black box, but black box is going to help you. When you're on Slack or the Facebook group, which, by the way, there is a Helio Facebook group and there is also a Slack channel. Both have gotten very busy since Mr. Bardwell has kind of blessed Helio a little bit, and there's a lot of excitement and there's a lot of angry people because, you know, there's just no such thing as a perfect firmware, and a lot of people aren't willing to put in the work. And that's one thing, honestly, that I found out about Helio, is that, you know, we are in uncharted territory. The developers are they started with Betaflight code, and they've just kept on changing it and making it into their own with the IMUF, and, you know, things are a bit complicated, and it's a new way of like doing things. I think it's better for most pilots, just because, you know, the new Betaflight just has so many features as far as like, man, you know, you have anti-gravity, but then you have I-term relax and throttle boost and this and that, and, you know, there's just so much going on inside there that it's just kind of confusing. And I like just having to, you know, just a few filter parameters to adjust and just letting the flight controller software do all of the rest of the work. It just seems to make life just a lot easier, you know, so I don't know why anybody would be against that. So, so definitely what you want to do is go into modes. You're going to want to go into your TARANIS, set up a switch, and set it up for black box. There's built-in memory. You don't have to worry about a card or nothing like that, so you can log your flights, and I'll show you what I do just to start off with and get some information. That way you have information to pass on to people. People just can't like guess this stuff. Like I said, we're dealing with high-end stuff here. In the black box, technically the way that you want is you want your logging rate set at least a fourth of what your PID loop rate is, which, so if I'm running at 32, I would want to log at 8K. But since I'm not really looking at PIDs and all that stuff yet, I'm just looking at, we want to look at like the Q values and our noise levels and stuff first, you can just go ahead and log at 2K. And then every time you are flying out there and you land and disarm and you turn off your you flip your switch to turn your log off, you go ahead and flip it back on and then arm again, and it creates a second log that's in the drop down box in Blackbox, and I will show you where that is as well. One other thing that's a little bit different in this is usually RC interpolation is set to like auto. I don't know if it's changed a lot in Betaflight 3.4. I haven't looked yet, but most people are running between like 8 and 14 milliseconds, and this is like really another finishing touch approach at the very end to kind of like bring things together. Has to do with like response and all this kind of stuff. I don't know. Like I said, this is high level. Don't ask me. Maybe somebody will chime in, or in one of the later videos I will have the answer. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first couple flights and the first couple setups. Once you have everything set up, the first thing you want to do is just go ahead and put in like the rates that you think you're going to be using, maybe your typical Betaflight or Butterflight rates. You are going to find that as you change D and as you change your filters, that these are going to change, because changing the D and the filters are really going to have effect as far as your flight performance goes. So they could stiffen up or loosen up your axis, and you're going to feel that. The other thing that you're going to feel is you're going to feel yaw D. Yaw D is actually active in Butterflight and Helio, and that's something that's not active in Betaflight 3.4, I don't believe. And if you listen to look at a Bardwell video from like 2 years ago, it's actually pretty interesting. I posted it. You know, 2 years ago, he was basically saying that the big downsides of Betaflight and the current software and controllers back then was they weren't able to handle 32K. They were not able to handle yaw D, and we didn't have independent access filtering. We just had overall notches and overall low passes that affect all three axes at the same time. Well, here we are 2 years later, and none of that stuff is in Betaflight really, but here it is in Helio and the iMuff technology. So anyway, let's take a look at a couple flights. So this was one of my first flights, not a maiden because I had a lot of gremlins to work out, but this was with the 5040s. And the 5040C dowels with this power system, like I said, just wasn't working out. They were deflecting like crazy above mid-throttle and above. It just didn't work. There was all kinds of like vibration and stuff straight out, running stock, everything. I did try some different filter ranges and this and that, but things just got real weird. And I had already been through this before with my other reverb. It was actually the opposite way, where I had to drop down in prop pitch. So I just kind of like scrapped it, flew every prop that I had, and see what gave me the best chance for success. And that was with the Dow 5046s. So let's take a look here. Alright, so this is maiden flight Dow 5046, stock PIDs, and stock filters. I take that back, not stock PIDs. I always drop my D down by like 2 or 3 on each axis to start out with, just in case there's a little too much in there that will start acting real funny with the filters and producing some stuff that we don't want. But right off the bat, I could tell that everything was good because I wasn't getting any of those wobbles or bobbles or whatever you want to call them. You can see them pretty easily in flight. Most people tuning Helio will see some at some point. It's almost like you're getting like blown by a gust of wind. So everybody pretty much knows that. I don't tune with that PV camera unless it's like super bad, then I know I can see it in there and something's going on. I always pretty much just tune by HD video and the way things are feeling. You know, we'll look at some black box stuff here in a little bit, but I can definitely tell that things were really smooth and everything was probably going to work out pretty good. But I wanted to test some other filters just in case. This flight here would have been the same setup right after it, and I actually lowered the filters, so we're putting the most amount of filtering we can into it. You can see the little bumps right there. They're real subtle, and there was some more right there. You can kind of see that my turns, there's a little bit more right there. Now this is with the filters turned all the way up, not all the way, but like 9,000, just kind of seeing what's going on. And you can see a little bit more, which is funny because I'll show you my stack later on. I'll put like a conclusions at the end. And the other thing to keep in mind is I do have an ND filter on. I always run with one of the sticky ones, and this is hard mounted with the gummies, and that's it. There's no tricks or nothing. I'll show you pictures of all that. But I was able to raise my Q values to like 8,000-9,000 and not have a whole lot of adverse effects besides a little. And besides my big stomach right here, this is resetting after one of the little bugs that is in. Sometimes when you change and go to reboot like your IMUF filter settings and stuff in the OSD, the thing still like will lock up and reset, and it happens in the GUI and stuff sometimes too. I don't really know what the deal is with that. I don't have any of those problems with the first generation board. Maybe it's an all-in-one thing. I'm not 100% sure, but we'll see how everything works out. I don't really care. I've had other flight controllers lock up on me. So this flight is with the filters where I think they might need to be, and this is just based off of going with experience. And I think I'm at like 3,800, 32, 32. It looks a little rocky and bouncy and shaky because I'm just not flying in big circles and paths, which is what you want to do whenever you're trying to get good black box data. You just want to keep like a consistent throttle and just kind of fly around so you get a good noise level, because black box will like average your noise, so it'll take all these punches and stuff into effect. So the Blackbox Explorer is built right into Butterfly here. So wherever you download and name your file, it'll be like right there. So if we want to take a look at, let's take a look at from the actual very first log that we had this morning when I was testing out the different kind of props, and it's a good representation of what I was actually talking about. So the first thing that I do is I change the graph to gyros. And what this is going to do is this is going to show us like what's going on all of our different axes, and it's going to show us how we can kind of like optimize and dial in our Q values. Also our prop selection and everything else, as you've seen and we talked about before. So the reason why that quad on the 5040s was just going nuts, you know, you can see what was happening is that there was just so much going into it that all we have is just these crazy little oscillations on roll, yaw, pitch, everywhere. And I changed, you know, my Q values everywhere from defaults all the way up to like 10,000. And I think these are like 10,000 right here. It's a shame that you can't see that stuff inside the black box. I don't think you can. Nah, probably has to be like changed or something like that. But you can see that it's, you know, if any of them got any better, the roll actually got a little bit better. You know, it's okay to have a little bit of this sometimes, but you don't want it like constant, like you see in this one, where it's constant and then you see these big times when it starts like really going out of control. And this is with smoothing all on. If you turn smoothing off, you can see it even more. So maybe I'll just go ahead and leave smoothing off so that way you can kind of get a better idea of it. The other thing that you want to do is, you know, when you got your logs here that you've created, is take a look if this is not as clear for you as far as like what you need to do. Click on the little spectrum analyzer thing there, and it takes a little bit of time for it to come up, and you can make it bigger. So you can see that I had just a big noise patch right there on the roll axis. And this is where in Betaflight and other people would say, well, you know, if Helio had a notch filter, you could put a notch filter on right there, and that would bring all that down. And maybe not necessarily. I've seen some cases where the notch filters are not as effective as we would like them to be. But if you click on the other axes, you can kind of see like where your noise is, and it's all pretty much in the same consistent range. And then if we want to see the effect of the different Q levels, we can just click on one of the other logs. So this is with more filtering, and this is with even more filtering, I believe. Yep. And you can see that sometimes more filtering actually brings out the problem even more. So, but you'll get weird cases where, like, if you go and look at this yaw, and then if we go down and look at the first couple, you can see the noise kind of spreads out a little bit and the peak goes down some. And then, well, we might as well take a look at the second log here with like the low filtering. So, you know, with the low filtering, there's really not, well, actually this would be, yeah, this would be a lot of filtering. It's actually not as much. So we'll open up the log from the flights that we just took and show you what those look like. So we've got all 4 of our flights. So the first one was just on stock. And if we take a look here, this is with smoothing off. Now see the difference that we have here? See how much better this looks compared to what we had on the thinner props that were just not matched up for the power system. It's like a night and day difference. So you definitely need to be flexible as far as what you have. And if we look at the noise graph on this with the stock filters, you can see that we have just a tiny little bump here that's barely above the noise floor, which I'm not 100% certain, but I bet we could probably clean that up with like some low pass filtering, or we'll see what happens with our PIDs. But you can see as I go through all 3 axes, it's pretty flat. And then this is what it looks like with the Q value all the way down, which is a lot of filtering. And then this is with Q all the way up. And you notice that it's not changing a whole lot. And really, it doesn't when you have the right setup. That's the key to like Odin, is that when you get your stuff set up the right way with the right props and everything, it's just the way it will go. So we'll look at the yaw axis. We'll just click around through a couple of these logs here and see if it gets any worse or any better. I mean, that's pretty much negligible. Let's take a look at where I think I need to be based on previous experience. And you can see that the yaw is very, very flat. Let's go to pitch. Pitch doesn't have any humps. There's a little bit down here which probably can be cleaned up with some filtering or PIDs. And then let's look at the roll. The roll is pretty flat. There's just like a little bit on there. And again, we'll compare that to the stock filtering on the Cyclone 5046, and it's barely any different at all. And this was just by raising the Q from 32 to 3200 and lowering the other ones to 2800. The important thing to remember about Q, I'll say it again, is that when it comes to Q, the lower the value, the more filtering you have, and the bigger the value, the less filtering you have. I don't know why it's confusing and why they can't like flip-flop that, but I'm not a coder or an engineer. So we've been going on for a long time here, so we're just going to leave it at this. I'm going to fly probably stock Q values on this and go ahead and try to tune it out, and I'll document that process and see how things go. So the big takeaways are, and corrections, definitely set up that black box so you can get help. Try things out until you get a good baseline that you can there go and share to Slack or to the Facebook group, because there's only so many developers and testers that can actually help out. You know, you've got regular guys like me that can kind of muddle my way through and at least get you started and give you some good advice. Definitely be flexible with your prop selections and stuff like that. I know people who fly like 6-inch rigs and 7-inch rigs are going to have not as many selections, and that's going to make things tough. I don't know how Helio fixes that if you have a problem, because I know my 5.5-inch, that was one of the reasons that I just kind of went back to the Betaflight rig, was I had that notch right there of noise that nothing seemed to correct. So I always had some kind of shimmy, but you can see in these videos that we're able to correct it. Always start by lowering D down a couple points on each axis. Do your test tunes, just keep your throttle 35, 45% consistently. Do some big circles or something like that so Blackbox doesn't take like punches and everything like that into its averaging when it comes to the noise, so you got good data to work with. You know, enjoy this if you can. Try not to get too crazy. I know a lot of people are used to just throwing things in to Betaflight and rolling. That's how I was for a long time. That's kind of how I still am with Betaflight. I'm using other people's tunes and everything else because it's just I don't have the time, or I just don't want to deal with it. But you have to put a little bit of work in on this one. I am going to use the stock default, so they are close. You saw it. I have proof. I'm sure there's going to be ways to clean it up as far as adjusting low pass filtering or something. You know, I'm sure the guys will see this video, or I'll pass this out, and you know, we'll see what's going on with that. But yeah, I don't really know what else I could add to it. You know, there's no perfect firmware. There's no perfect developer or anything else. But just have fun, enjoy the technology. A year from now, we'll be talking about something else that's just as crazy and just as awesome. So until then, just fly what you got, enjoy it, and we will talk to you guys later. Thanks for sticking around.